The Gourmet Gladiator. Chapter 2 Toby the Terrific. I stand in front of a mirror crying tears over my own body. I grab my stomach and pull with all my might, but it only begins to hurt, so I drop to the floor and scream in pain. The air around me flees away as I scream and cry as I attack my own body. Why do I have to be the one to be forced to eat the table? I want to change like Rebecca and become cool. I don't want to be the fat ugly pig that eats pie off of his face. I want to become the top chef and defeat bullies like Bob. My fingers dig into my flabby forearms and I clench my teeth so damn hard that my teeth began to crack. Blood started to run down my arms and the pain was not there. My tears began to burn my face. I could feel the fat surrounding my arms and oh God, I thought I was playing with some thick mashed potatoes. My door bursts open and my father is standing at the door. He saw me nude kneeling in front of the mirror as I cried and screamed. Without a word he turns around and throws a pillow at my face before he closes the door behind him. You think your own family would be nice to you before you got powers, but no. They only see a fat tub of lard that could never be powerful. I take the pillow to my face and scream. I get up in a push-up position with a fire in my eyes. I will surpass everyone. After 3 hours and 3,000 push-ups, I saw the sweat of my body drip into the puddles of blood from my hands and arms. My chest is tight, and as I put in the extra 500 push-ups, I saw that my arms were no longer flaps but instead muscular with stretch marks that made them look even more uglier than before. My stomach from holding this position was now muscular, but my flesh dangled to the floor. It was like my old body was trying to remove itself but couldn't do it. I looked up from me doing my push-ups, and in the mirror my whole face changed. My face was more worked out, but that couldn't fix the fat that was in my cheeks. It was so flabby and disgusting. After the final 500 there was only 1 hour from midnight. That is when I would be teleported to eat. I see that I was still in the nude, so I walked over to the closet. Before I knew it, my body swelled up so terribly bad. I looked like a purple blueberry that was about to bust. You see main characters in manga working out like this as if it was nothing, but yet here I am now on the ground feeling as if my body is going to rip itself apart. I'd rather die right now than feel like this. My mom ran into the room and shrieked in terror at the sweat and blood that was soaking into the carpet. She ran over to me and mercifully struck me out cold with her fist. My father gave me a pillow when he saw me suffering. My mother knocked me out and screamed. Truly my mother and father love me, I think. But in truth I know that they were both just like me when I was young. I wish I was spoiled out of wazoo and handsome. But no, I am instead a fat ugly cretin with a body that looks so hideous. Why is the world so cruel to the people that are different? My eyes opened and there I was in a white room filled with a bunch of others who were all just waking up. I looked down and saw that I was wearing black sweatpants and a black sweatshirt. Next to me was a kid named Randolph. Creepy kid, but still one of my friends in school. He was there today in the last 3 hours of school. He's nice and all, but tends to say some creepy things. He wakes up and sees me and excitingly says, "Good morning, Goldilocks." I pulled my hoodie over my head and stood up along with the thousands of others. I ignored Randall as he kept talking to me. Above us all was a man just floating on a giant spatula. He was so high above us that I couldn't make out his exact figure, but with his deep and majestic voice he says, "You are now at the appropriate age to dine alone. Feed yourself, your power." In front of us all was a banquet of foods that I couldn't even describe. The smells in the air and the tastes that made my jaw drool was not like any other. But even though I was in the middle of the crowd with Randall, I decided to let the other thousands of people eat and dine. I was just hoping that George is far away and eating. Hours pass by and now it's down to only about 100 people. Randall went missing about an hour ago and so has the chef. I felt good when I saw that George was nowhere to be seen, and so I ran towards the table with my stomach growling. A foot pressed against my back and launched me forwards. My mouth hit the white plastic table. My teeth broke the table and few of the plastic pieces were launched down my throat. I coughed on the floor as blood began to pour out my mouth. Then a figure that was fat and wearing a chef's apron appeared before me. I thought I was going to be saved. Before I even noticed, he slams another portion of the table into my mouth, made me chew it, and slipping water down my throat to get it down. I squirmed and fought, but he was firm with his hands, and after all of it people stared at me in horror. The chef looked down at me and I saw his big doughy face and cried. He says, "Boy, thank you for finishing the meal. When you return home, I will keep a close eye on you." I twist my head just a little and saw George smiling. I pass out with hatred and anger so fierce that I could feel my heart stop. I awake in my bed. My hands are bony and my arms are muscular. I jump up from my bed and rip off my clothes with ease to see that my body looked like a role model bodybuilder. I ran over to the mirror and it seemed tiny to me now. I could see my boxes, muscular legs, and my jacked six-pack. I squat down and saw my face. It wasn't like before. I couldn't recognize myself as my jawline and face both looked as if a master craftsman molded them. My hair was black and slick. My body is now a powerhouse of its former self. I put on some of my dad's clothes that I took just in case I could eat the salad and rushed downstairs. My mom and dad took no longer than 2 seconds to see me and look excited. They ran over to me and gave me a hug. This was overwhelming so much that I broke down and cried. I grabbed the back of both of their shirts and fell on my knees. But then I felt anger. Huge thorns exploded out of my back similar to what my parents could do. They jumped back and evaded the thorns. I stand up and shout, "Why show me love now?" Thorns shot out of my arms at my family as I scream in pain. My father expertly pushes my mother out of the way before growing thorns on his body. He ran at me as he smoothly dodged my attacks and ended up striking me in my stomach. I scooted back a few feet before he stares at me with killing intent. My mother runs in between us and shouts, "Stop fighting." Thorns reside and the sudden power fades. I looked at my mother and sorrowfully say, "Please accept my apology." My mother runs up and hugs me as her tears run down my chest. My father walks back over to his fancy wooden chair in the living room and reads the newspaper. After my mom lets go, I go and wait at the bus stop. Immediately the bus arrives and the people on the bus have their jaw drop. My fancy black clothes are all torn up, that must be the reason. It's whatever as I sit behind the bus driver. It is to my surprise that Randall sits next to me. Weird part is that I only knew that it was him by how he was the only one picking his nose. He looks like he went through a massive change. His hair, for instance, changed from short and black to long and a bright brown. His skin is no longer pale and instead bronze. And his features remind me of my new body. I touch his shoulder and smile as I warmly say, "Hey man, what did you eat last night?" A power surged through my body that gave me goosebumps on the back of my neck. Randall took his pinky out of his nose and looks at me as he says, "Oh, I ate this weird roasted peanut of some sort. I forget what it's called." I say, "That's so cool." He looks at me and suddenly I shake. He menacingly says, "How was that table you ate, Toby? This guy is dangerous." I continue to smile as I say, "It was quite bland." He lets out a chuckle of pure joy as I genuinely felt scared. When I got off the bus, I saw Bob hanging his arm over Rebecca's shoulder. I walked up behind him and tapped on Bob's shoulder. He turned around and was shocked to see my face. He smiles as he asks, "Who are you?" Rebecca looks at me and jumps up in glee. She hugs me and Bob becomes angry. Rebecca looks up at me and asks, "What did you end up eating, Toby?" Bob looks at her, then at me in wonder. He strikes out towards her with his fist. Out of instinct, I threw her and myself to the ground to evade the attack. I jump up to my feet and look at Bob in terror. Bob smiles as he says, "Looks like George failed. I will talk to him later." He walks up to me and places his hand on my shoulder. A burst of power went through my body. As he grips my shoulder, my foot disappeared and then reappeared on his shoulder, kicking him in the face and knocking him backward. My foot appears back and Bob looks at me in confusion. "How do you have my power and that kind of body?" Then my hand disappears. This kind of power feels as if it is trying to be pushed. Thousands of portals appear around Bob as he frantically looks everywhere for an escape. My fist comes out of those portals like light as I kept striking him from every angle. I fell on one knee as the portals fade away and my fist reappears. Bob was on the floor, beaten and bruised. Rebecca came to my side and lifted me up to my feet. I look at her and smile as I say, "I ate the table." I began to laugh hysterically as Rebecca helped me walk inside the school building. I am able to calm down and sit down in our first period class before the bell rings. Rebecca looks concerned, so I put my hand on her shoulder. She holds my hand with hers as she sadly says, "Are you okay, Toby?" I take a deep breath before I smile and say, "Yeah. Actually, I feel like I can conquer the world. But don't worry, that isn't my biggest priority now." Rebecca then smiles a cheerful smile as she states, "Well, good. Cersei star read. This wasn't as good as the first chapter for me to read. I just felt as if you were more of saying and not showing, especially with the fight scene between Toby and his father. And the first scene of this chapter just seemed unrealistic for him to lose that much weight in a matter of hours. Nevertheless, I like the dynamic between the characters and the new Toby. 2 mo ago. 1. Zensilariku.
Sorry, those were a couple reviews of the chapter. But either way, that was the second chapter of the Gourmet Gladiator. I hope you guys enjoy it. Have a good one. My name is Grant Ayers. You can check this out on Inkit. Have a good day.